Hi, I'm William Boger. I'm a CPA with over 35 years of experience in taxation and helping taxpayers. And in this clip, I want to talk about alternative methods of handling your IRS tax troubles. So there are just a set number of these various methods that can be used, and we're going to go over all of them in this clip. So, first of all, the first big division is that there are what are called in compliance or IRS approved methods, and then there are some non IRS approved methods. First, I'm going to touch on those non IRS approved methods, and then we'll get into what the approved select number of approved IRS methods are. There are 5 of these which we will cover. So the non-approved methods, or out of compliance methods, if you will, are basically don't file your tax returns, or perhaps you filed your tax returns and they show you owe a lot of money, or you filed some returns that show you owe a lot of money to the IRS which you can't pay, and now you're not filing, and the solution I would say is to just lie low and avoid the IRS. Now, this is not such a great solution because, one, lately the IRS is getting much better at spotting people who are not filing and supposed to be filing. Their methods have improved in this area tremendously over the last 3 or 4 years. And they're also getting better at locating assets that you think may be hidden. And then maybe most importantly, this type of a method leaves you open to actually a criminal tax filing, or rather a criminal court charges against you. You could end up serving time in the big house, the federal prison, which probably not a good outcome. Probably wouldn't happen, but it could. We won't get into how that breaks down right now. But most of all, it's just not a good way to live, being hiding from the IRS, worrying about where they're going to get you all the time. So let's put that one aside and get into the methods for getting in compliance, for getting the IRS off your back. Now, when I'm saying getting compliance, you're probably thinking, hey, I just want the IRS off my back. Well, I want to get the IRS, out of my life. So, but that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about an in compliance or getting in compliance with the IRS. It's a little bit more descriptive, and later when I do a little deeper dive into what this in compliance means, you'll see why it's key, and it's also the thing, or one of the things that these late night programs that you see, like on either your sports channel, you're watching basketball, you're watching football, and somebody comes on and says, we can take care of your IRS problems. If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS, call us today at the blah, blah, blah number, and we will handle all your IRS problems. Okay, well, these guys would use one of these 5 methods, because these are all the methods there are, and we'll talk about how compliance is key to all that. So let's go into those 5 methods. I'm going to go over those and describe each of them, and then that'll probably set the groundwork for our next video. I'm going to go into depth on each of those 5 methods and what's required. So let's see what they are. Okay, one of which is called the installment method, or an IA installment method. You make an agreement with the IRS and you owe them however much you owe them, $30,000, and you agree you're going to pay this over a certain number of years, probably 5 years, but not necessarily, every month, and the IRS will be happy with you as long as you meet some other requirements, which are the in compliance methods that in compliance requirements that I'm going to talk about. So that's one. The next is what's called an offer in compromise. You've certainly heard about that one because that's the one that everybody knows about. I'm going to pay the IRS $2,000 even though I owe them $100,000, and they're going to go away and everyone's happy. Sometimes that's a good way to go. Sometimes that just does not apply to a particular taxpayer situation. It may or may not be the best. Again, we'll come back and we'll talk about that in depth in a future video. The next one is called just pay the whole amount. Now you might say, hey, well, if I could pay the whole amount, I wouldn't be watching this video. So that's kind of a dumb idea. But no, in some situations for some taxpayers, paying the whole amount might work well. So we'll talk about when that would be. Okay. The fourth method is called maybe you can't, you're just so short on money, on income coming in compared to your expenses. There's no way you can make a payment. If we can convince the IRS of that, or you can convince the IRS of that, then you're currently non-collectible, or CNC. That has some advantages, that has some disadvantages, and we'll talk about how to go about that in a future video. That's CNC. The fifth way is through bankruptcy. Sometimes bankruptcy is a great tool to take care of tax problems. That gets pretty technical. You definitely, that's not a do-it-yourselfer like some of these other ones are, but you're going to need a bankruptcy attorney. But I will briefly touch on when bankruptcy can help you with these. So those are all the methods available to take care of your taxes, to get out of your tax problems, and we'll be talking about, or I'll be talking about those in detail in a future series of videos. And I'll also touch on one last thing before we leave, because in all of those methods, you need to be what's called in compliance. One thing about being in compliance that is required is that you file your taxes, all your taxes up to your current tax return. So that needs to be done in any of these cases. I'll talk more why either needs to be or should be in any of these five methods or programs of handling, and I'll talk about that more in a future video. So thanks for listening. Again, have a great day. I'm William Boger, CPA.